Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Financial Autonomy for Women, the Personal Finance Podcast. My name is Maureen Paley. I am a life, career, and financial coach, and I'm so happy to be your host. I consider myself so lucky to get to talk to women financial practitioners out in the world doing good work and bringing their best practices and knowledge to you. And today's episode is no different. Today we have a very special guest, Yanez, and we're going to talk today about money and the nervous system. In fact, today's title is The Money Nervous System Connection with Yanez. So, without any delay, I'd love to introduce you to Deanna. Deanna Giselle Yanez, CFP, RLP, is a money coach at All the Colors and wealth manager at Strategy Squad. Deanna provides clients with the education they need to make financial decisions, accountability to take action, and coaching to understand why they do what they do with money. As an individual and group coach, Deanna specializes in helping women of color entrepreneurs create sustainable money systems for themselves, their loved ones, and their communities. Through Strategy Squad, Deanna supports impact investors in aligning their values and investments. Deanna earned her Certified Financial Planner Practitioner designation and the Registered Life Planner designation. Deanna completed compassionate inquiry training to enhance her facilitation skills in a trauma-informed way. When she's not helping clients own their power with money and life, you'll find her hiking, reading in parks, and learning more about Latin American history. Deanna Yanez, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Maureen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh my goodness. I am so glad that you're here. I think I'm just so excited for our conversation today and breaking down this connection between our finances and our nervous systems, which I personally believe is a really important one to talk about. And in my lived experience with my finances, I have seen that connection be a real thing. So I want to make sure that our listeners know what to look for when this connection happens in real life. So let's start there. So, money and the nervous system. Personally, I don't hear a lot of people talking about that. Usually when we talk about money, we talk about investments, the numbers, so on and so forth, strategies, things like that. But here we are walking around in these bodies with these nervous systems. And let's talk with the listeners about ways that the connection between your finances and your nervous system might show up in everyday life. Like, where do you see it show up?
Right. So our nervous system is how we respond to the outside world. It affects everything, right? And I started learning about the nervous system when I was taking that compassionate inquiry training with Gabor Mate. And I've also done follow-up trainings, but it's really like how our body automatically responds to the world. And it could be positive, it could be negative. A lot of the times it's just neutral. It's just the way that we respond. Whenever I'm giving workshops on money, I often start by reminding people of freeze, fight, flight, fawn, right? Those are the 4 automatic reactions that our body will have when it feels threatened.
Mm-hmm.
And because money is related to our sense of security, safety, well-being, and it's taboo to talk about, very easily a conversation around money can feel threatening. Right. And when we feel threatened, it's harder to be creative and have new ideas because our body is in conservation mode. It's defensive. And I'm going to go through the 4 responses, the autonomic responses, for anyone who may not be familiar. The first one is fight.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody wants to fight something that I said or something that they heard in a workshop that from another participant, pause, right? That's the way that your body's responding. It may be a memory that you're having from a while ago. If you want to flee, as in you really, really need to look at your phone or you really need to look at your email. Like I'm doing a lot of these things online, so it's very easy for people to feel distracted.
Right.
If you feel frozen is that you can't keep the thread of the conversation, that you're just kind of like, wait, this isn't sinking in. I can't understand. Fawn is when you are soothing the other person, when you want the other person to feel okay so that you feel okay. And these four responses are so natural, so normal. And yet, what they do for us is that they take us back to known strategies that may not be working.
Okay, I want to wrap those last few words up for everybody. They take us back. So these are automatic reactions that all of us humans have, right? We can boil it down to those four, but they take us back to the strategies that are known, right? These are kind of like old, ingrained. We learned these a long time ago, and we're bringing them to a new situation in the present moment. And they may or may not be successful for what we're trying to get to, correct?
Right. Definitely. Definitely. And when we're in those autonomic responses, it's again, like I mentioned earlier, it's harder to be creative. It's harder to be connected to the other person. If you're having a conversation with your employer about money and you're fawning, you just want them to feel okay. Like this is so common for women. We're
Oh my
negotiating,
goodness.
right? We're negotiating our starting salary or a raise, and really we don't want to make them upset.
And that's where we like, no, no, that's okay. I'm okay. Oh yeah, that's good enough. So on and so forth, which really might betray what we're really worth, right? The dollar value connected to our work and our labor.
So sometimes we feel that these responses are acting against us, but they're often the only ones that we have access to.
Right.
So a lot of these are developed in childhood. Like it's like if you're a 3-year-old, you're not going to be like, all right, I'm going to move out of the situation, grab my little suitcase, go get a job. Like you're 3. You just it was what you have.
Yeah. And so, you brought up the fawning, the fleeing, the fighting, and the freezing, right? So I personally, I think we've all experienced all of these. I know that some of us might have a tendency to lean on one reaction more than others, right? But I can see how there is a definite connection to our survival in these reactions. And as you mentioned, something that makes me feel better because personally, I can be really hard on myself, right? You go in and you do that negotiation for your salary, and you're like, you come out and you're like, why did I do that? I should have said this differently. I should have done this differently. I can't believe it. But when you put it in the framework of these are learned reactions, like there's something that our body and our systems know that when we use this, it will get us a certain result. And those learnings are deeply embedded in our systems, right? So it kind of helps me feel better that I'm not weak. I'm not, not advocating for myself. I'm not just a poor negotiator. This is something that's deeply ingrained. And I think it's important for us to point out we can work with it.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And some of the ways that people can work with it, I mean, I love journaling. It might sound really corny, but when it comes to money, money looks like a math problem because it has numbers.
Right.
It's really, really much more of a psychology question,
Tell
right?
us more.
Like it's not like money's not really a problem. It's like a relationship that we have from when you're a child and you understand what money is till you lose cognitive capacity. You're in relationship with money. And when a situation comes up and you sense that you're responding from one of those like fight, flight, freeze, fawn, the first thing to do is actually to congratulate yourself that you even noticed it.
That's an excellent point. Just the awareness that, okay, I see this happening right now. This is what's going on.
Yeah, that's the starting point. And sometimes it doesn't happen until 3 days after the conversation.
True.
But that's the starting point and bringing in a lot of curiosity. Instead of saying I shouldn't have done this, it's more about like, why did I do that? What was happening?
It almost sounds, Deanna, your compassionate inquiry training, right? Curiosity is one of the aspects of compassion. And so instead of beating myself up, if I can kind of find a foothold in a compassionate and curious stance, I might be able to break apart and understand and untangle what happened there.
Right. And sometimes we need practice. again, staying with the topic of negotiations, I know that a few employers ago, I was working with a coach, and we spent like 3 hours with me talking through how I was going to negotiate for my salary, and it really made a difference. I
Mhm.
showed up to that negotiation conversation as an adult with like adult creativity and adult questions, as opposed to like a child that's like, whatever you give me is good. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Which for a lot of us that are gendered as female and socialized as female, that's the main one that we tend to go to, right? Fawning, like, if you're okay, I'm okay. Like, you
Yeah.
can always lose it.
Yeah. Let me get small. And it's okay. Just as long as you're okay. I don't need much. I'm right here. It's okay. I'll take whatever
It's
you give me.
nothing.
It's true. I mean, I think that anybody that's received that conditioning has felt that, has lived it. So you bring up a really excellent point that I want to emphasize for everybody listening. So the awareness, number one, like if we can, and we don't necessarily have to catch ourselves in the moment of the fawning or the freezing or the fighting or the fleeing. Like you mentioned, it might be 3 days later where it dawns on you where you're like, oh, that's what I was doing. And then the awareness is one aspect, and I think the curiosity and the exploration of maybe the why, like how and why did that happen? And investigation can be a powerful thing. So usually I think when I know I have this reaction, right? So I didn't handle something well and I just want to shut down and blame myself, right? That's a way of shutting down rather than exploring and probing and kind of being this like explorer into, okay, let's take a look at some deeper things here. So I want to bring that up because I think that's I feel the empowerment in my body just talking about it that way. The way that my body feels when I go, God, I can't believe that. Shut down. It feels hard, stiff. Like for those who are listening, I'm patting my chest. I almost feel like there's this big wall building up between me and the world. And then when I go into like languaging and thinking about like what would it be like to explore this and not blame myself, it's a much freer, easier feeling. I don't feel so blocked. I don't feel so like removed from the outside world or even from my internal world.
Yeah, and I was actually grabbing a notebook because I went my current coach, Dr. Ana Maria Lopez Caldwell, and I think coaches should always have a coach or be like in and out of a coaching relationship, because in order for me to give to others, I also need to be like well nourished or well,
Yes.
like have a thinking partner. But anyway, when she's talking about how to find experiences, how to find alignment with experiences of dissonance, she talks about three things. First is seek awareness, right?
Mhm.
What happened? Where did that come from? Then she recommends to adopt a both and mentality. Like both things can be true,
Yes.
right? Without making ourselves wrong. So going back to this example of negotiating for a raise, maybe you're looking back and you're like, okay, I did respond out of a fawning autonomic response, as opposed to like standing my ground and saying what I needed or negotiating. Well, both can be true. Like, what were the needs that you were trying to get met? Maybe there's fear about if you're like the single income person in your household, right?
Mhm.
Or you're carrying a lot of debt, or whatever it is, like the reasons that you maybe felt like you couldn't put yourself out there. And at the same time, your belief in yourself, like both the idea that like you could find another position somewhere else if you needed to. Or maybe this is a reminder that like actually you don't have emergency funds. Like if you're living paycheck to paycheck, it can be really, really difficult to stand your ground and like risk income because there's
Yes.
no safety net,
Mhm.
right? So maybe actually what you need to do is next year, when the next renegotiation is due, you need to like have spruced up your resume, have an emergency fund, and be ready to walk away if that's what's needed.
The strategy there sounds like building up the resources to go in confidently knowing that or go going into that negotiation where the stakes are no longer so high. As you mentioned, if we're going in not reminded of our worth and like the fact that, hey, we can go somewhere else, and we have our emergency fund is fully funded, or at least part of the way funded, we're going to feel differently going into that negotiation.
Yeah. And the strategy is really, I think I'm not one. When I work with clients, when I work with myself, I don't have like routine strategies. What I like about this framework that I'm sharing from Dr. Ana Maria is that it's broad enough for
Hmm.
you to use it and whatever makes sense, right? So it's kind of like if you sit down and you think, what could be the reason that I'm feeling that my nervous system is feeling out of whack?
Hmm.
And then listening to those reasons. Your nervous system isn't doing it against you. It's
Right.
doing it because something's threatening, right?
Yeah, it's an
Like,
system. That's what they do.
it's not like trying to sabotage you. No, something is literally threatening you, and that's why you're responding that way.
Right.
Right. And what is threatening you? They could be a myriad of different reasons. It can be, and sometimes for people, it's helpful. Again, I feel like I'm touting coaches a lot, but it's helpful to hire a coach and talk it through with them. Have someone help you kind of open up what
Yeah.
the reasons are. So we adopt a both end mentality of like all of these things might be real. And then you assess in your individuality, in your experiences. You take back the fact that you do have choices. Even if our choice is to stay in the same place, not fight for it, it's still a choice. And that will soothe your nervous system as you decide what to do next.
Yep.
With the political situation that we have right now, I mean, we're talking February 7th, 2025. We were just talking about this before we started recording, everything that's happening in so many spaces
Hmm.
right now. Maybe we're just going to be like, maybe a little frozen, not showing, not, at least that's what's happening with me. I'm just like a little bit like, what do I do next?
Yep.
And possums play dead for a reason. It works. Like, it's not bad if you're a possum and you play dead.
Yes.
Who's trying to eat you will be like, "Oh, she's dead. I'm not gonna eat something dead," and they'll leave.
Right.
Like, they're not against us. It's not like yeah, there's both all of the things, our cognitive cortex that makes logical decisions, our autonomic response that's trying to defend us, like, these are working together,
Mhm.
and a regulated nervous system can respond to threat, and it can relax when there's no threat.
Respond versus react. Usually I think about when I think about what I'm the way I try to go into situations, interpersonal relationships, so on and so forth. I focus on responding rather than reacting. And I think that what you just mentioned there, like when my nervous system is regulated and balanced and I'm in more of a curious and creative space, feeling grounded and confident, I respond to threats or
Mhm.
perceived threats, right? Or someone said something funny and I want to investigate that with them. It's rather than, hey, what did you just say? Type of thing. Like I can actually go in with some essence of this isn't while I want to encounter this isn't an emergency that I need to fight against.
Right. And the part about being able to relax, I think is also really important
Right.
because I think we live in a society in the US where like relaxing is not really looked upon as a positive thing. Like you're like, why are you relaxing? Like and our nervous system does need to be able to relax too.
Right.
If you're constantly on high alert, we're creating a lot of stress for ourselves.
Right.
And again, when we're on high alert, we're going to do what we've done before,
Mhm.
whether it worked or not.
There you go. So you mentioned before an example of like a single earner household. Let's think about a single mom who's raising kids and maybe she has a job or maybe she has two to make ends meet. And this is where I want to connect your background into social justice. That mom is walking around with an experience where her nervous system is most likely on high alert and she doesn't get to rest. and how, carrying that experience, not just maybe through a rough patch, but this could be years of that experience of no rest. That has a big effect, not just on her finances, but also on her well-being overall.
Yeah. And the things that I think, I'm thinking of clients that I have
Mhm.
who are in that
Mm.
situation. I'm thinking of like one thing I want to say first is there's Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. She is a Zen nun. She says that without inner change, there can be no outer change. Like if I don't change the way that I see the story, that I tell myself the story, there won't be any outer change.
Mhm.
But without collective change, no change matters.
And
So
what do you mean by collective change?
I'm sitting over here thinking like childcare should not be as expensive as it is,
Mhm.
right? I'm definitely like childcare should be much more affordable, available. Like there shouldn't be 40 students per child. Like these are very much like my political opinions. And I
Mhm.
bring those into my coaching relationship, though most of my clients are aware of them. Like there's a values alignment.
Mhm.
But those collective changes, that like sphere of influence, to use your word,
Yes.
that are outside of my client's control, they affect my client. Although they may be out of her control, they're affecting her. So when
Absolutely.
we look at the reality, like definitely no gaslighting, like, oh, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, try harder. It doesn't work. You're just denying. You're just denying yourself. You're denying the reality that you see. So I think it's helpful to put in the context of like, this is why a single mom with one or two jobs may be feeling really stressed, right? And with inflation being what it is, grocery costs being what it is, like there are structural things beyond her control. Once we acknowledge that, sometimes it can feel overwhelming and negative, but honestly, it I think it helps people focus back in on what they do have control over.
Excellent point.
Like these are things I can't do anything about them. I'm going to manage these problems, these things, these situations. But what is she having control? I'm remembering this client that I'm thinking about. She was an EFT, emotional freedom technique. She did tapping. She had taken some training 15 years earlier. And I
Mhm.
asked her, like, what are some things that you could do to help you feel more settled? And she immediately thought of that because she had training in it.
Right.
For some people, it might be spending more time with your dog, like small little things that maybe they don't make a giant change, but they settle you, will help you again have a relaxed nervous system. I'm also thinking there's a practitioner named Irene Leon, Irenelyon. She's out of Canada and she has a ton of free YouTube videos on nervous system regulation. I took one of her courses. What she starts her course with, the one that I took, is with orienting, just like putting your feet on the ground and looking around you, being like, what is here? Right? The sun is shining. There's a tree in front of me, like looking at things around you to come back into your body out of a state of panic. And one of the other parts that I love about being a coach is that I believe people are incredibly resourceful.
Mhm.
Helping people tap into their what does it feel like to be regulated? They will start to create their own next steps. And we don't have to know the entire solution. We just have to know one step at a time.
What you're describing, first of all, as a coach, this is the most inspiring and gratifying part of being a coach is being in a space with someone where you can help them recognize what's inside them, and then they start resourcing internally, and then their actions start happening from those inner resources. That to me is like an absolute privilege to be in a relationship, in a coaching relationship with someone where we get to do that. Um, and I think also what you're sharing, Deanna, is like the things that you're describing are fairly simple. They're fairly ordinary. I don't need to go to Sedona and do a spa retreat to regulate my nervous system. While that may help, it may go a long way in doing that. I can actually take the next 30 seconds and feel all 5 senses in my body to ground myself in my sensory awareness, which then also shifts my brain chemistry, shifts my nervous system, so on and so forth. I can do something pretty simple. I can like roll around on the floor with my dog. I can go give her an extra big snuggle and use all these silly words that all the nicknames I have for her that aren't her name. I can like embrace something that's very available and quite ordinary as a way to say to my nervous system, "Hey, you're okay."
Yeah. I'm also thinking about, again, connecting it back to social justice. Another person that I really follow is Adrienne Marie Brown,
Huh?
and she wrote a book called Pleasure Activism. And she talks about like the revolution, what we're moving into needs to feel more pleasurable than what we have today.
Amen.
And you see so many movements like I've seen that on Instagram, like highlighting Black joy, right?
Mhm.
Highlighting joy, like
Yeah.
reminding ourselves that that is also part of our experience. It's not always fighting. There's this kind of resistance and being joyful. Again, that will bring more creative solutions. Like
Hmm.
so many ways of people to organize themselves. There's so many. What we have right now in the US is a version of how people can organize themselves. There are other versions.
True. There's other sheets of music to sing from, right?
Mm.
And what you're bringing up in describing, the social justice connection. Anybody who's listened to my other episodes knows I'm a systems person. And, I've brought it up before for the single mother who orders DoorDash a couple times a week, who is having a cash flow shortfall. As a coach, I would never shame her for doing
Mhm.
DoorDash. DoorDash might be part of how she protects her mental health. If she has a job or two and has to parent children and is in the grind of week to week, month to month, making ends meet, that could be the key to her sanity for a few months or maybe for a year, granted, and then I think what I also love that you said was like this narrative about, hey, just pick yourself up, like just do something different, just stop buying this and stop ordering DoorDash. And this is gaslighting, I think, at its essence, and it's basically denying the fact that our systems have a real effect on our day-to-day lives. And these systems therefore have an effect on our nervous systems.
And how do we take ownership of where we do have power, right? Especially as women, owning power. Like sometimes that feels like, oh, power is not for me, because often we think of power as like domination over other people. But I think this was Barbara Staney who talked about power often being seen as domination, but really for women, it's often dominion. Having
Uh,
dominion over myself, having the ability to make choices over my body, over my children, over my time.
Autonomy. That's the whole essence, the very essence of this show.
Yeah, and where do we have autonomy? And like I
Mhm.
was saying, this client that I'm thinking of, those first 10 minutes of the day, like making sure those first 10 minutes of the day were dedicated to EFT tapping changed her day.
Wow.
And again, that's not a solution I would have thought of for her. It's something that a resource that she already had inside of her. I'm very much of the belief that, and again, and I just want to like be honest and like, I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know where, but as each person's nervous system becomes more regulated, as we like start to prioritize our care, that of our communities, our loved ones, it's possible for things to shift
Collectively.
collectively.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I had a conversation with someone the other day. I think, especially about what's going on in the United States and I think in a capitalistic society, a lot of people are exhausted. I think there's an exhaustion, right? 40-hour work week. I'm a big believer in, as mammals, I don't think that we're meant to sit in office cubicles for 40 hours a week and, sit at desks in front of screens all day, every day under fluorescent lightings like that. I know that's like a really specific example, but I do think that you're right. There are other ways of being, and there are other system models that we have yet to implement that can reinforce and regulate and support the health of our nervous systems and therefore our lives and the things that materialize in our lives. And one of those could be like if that working mom had affordable, reliable, safe, quality childcare, what changes do you think would show up in her nervous system?
Yeah. It would be incredible. So the Scandinavian countries have been doing it for about 30, 40 years. There's a move where they try to make it as easy for fathers to spend time with children. So it changes the whole society. I also remember hearing that when men spend more time with young children, the country as a whole is less likely to go into war. Like
Wow.
somehow that changes men's brains. It makes
Hmm.
them more like maybe we shouldn't be killing other people's children. Which is it's awesome that it's possible. Like their brain changes because they studied people's brains over time. And one of the situations that's really, again, very much being centered in the time that we're in, how do we both hold the future that's possible while protecting what we have right now? So when I'm thinking about social justice, I'm very much leaning on like, what am I seeing other people doing? And also as someone who is highly sensitive, I try to also see like, how do I make sure that I don't burn out? Right. That
Yeah.
will, yeah. That I don't just like take myself out when how much fight can my nervous system actually take? And then not shaming myself for whatever amount of fight I can take.
Absolutely. I had a conversation with a friend a couple weeks ago saying, like, I haven't done enough. I haven't done enough to be part of this movement for equity, considering the state of what's a growing oligarchy and authoritarianism in the United States. She was saying, I haven't done enough. And I think over my journey in working for social justice and understanding, like you mentioned, like our energy, we need to be mindful of our own internal energy reserves. One of the things that I started to realize was I have seasons in my life. Like it's been a number of years, where I can understand, like, okay, that was my season of dedicated service to my community. And now my season looks more like advocacy, using my voice, raising the voice of others, having conversations like we're having today. And maybe in another season of my life, it won't be necessarily action, but maybe it'll be financing the movement. Maybe it'll be right now, all I can do is I can donate. Not everybody has the time to. It's something that I do every election season is I call voters in other states and encourage them to vote and so on and so forth. So not everybody has the time to do that, right? And so being okay with like understanding your season and what your needs are. I think because here's the thing, Deanna, if you just went ahead and went all out in your advocacy and your action, you would burn out. And we need you, right? We need you. So and we need you to be whole and well and creative and joyful. Because your creativity and your joyful and your joy and your well-being is what's going to fuel and I think have that ripple effect to the people that you work with to keep them going as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a delicate balance because some of the things that I do personally as like someone who works with money, someone who's focused on social justice, and also someone whose gifts are really in the one-to-one. Like
Right.
that's where I feel the most success. And that's where I feel that I make the most impact. It's really in the one-to-one. And I often have this external idea that like the one-to-one isn't enough. I've learned though to just go where it is that I function the best. So I just kind of let go of that idea that the one-to-one wasn't enough And I still do stay in touch with the macro level. I was hearing someone talk about the different levels of engagement, right? The micro is where I shine, the one to one. The meso might be like organizational review. In the firm, I work for a firm, Strategy Squad is part of a firm called Natural Investments, and we have a racial equity team. And I've been part of that racial equity team for a couple of years, and I've helped make changes there, helped implement new solutions. That's kind of on the meso level. I'm also very involved with the Latino SER Summit. That's to bring more Latinos into financial services. I'm involved with like a couple of other organizations. On the macro level, which would be like systems wide change, I don't know where my involvement is there other than like witnessing what people are doing and dropping a lot of names about people who are making that kind of change, right?
Yeah.
So again, Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, and Adrienne Marie Brown, like these are people who are making systems level change or working on systems level change and staying connected to it, but also knowing like what is my personal sphere of influence. And I'm not gonna burn out because I really do like eat what I cook. Like I'm thinking about my nervous system a lot. We were talking about this earlier, how I often will like get lost in work and finish
Right.
work way too late. But I've just implemented something new where I'm gonna close my calendar every other Friday, right? And literally on my calendar, it says, like, nervous system regulation day. It's it's a continuous kind of living into who we wanna be,
Right.
giving myself slack as I do that. I've also been trying to be more cognizant of the news. I think for a long time, I was like, I can't, like, it's completely outside of my sphere of influence. I don't wanna know. And I've started to read more of it ever since actually Trump got elected. I've been much more diligent about like spending time on the news every day. And I live
Mhm.
in Mexico City. So I also am trying to like learn about the news here, and it's kind of like, I don't think I personally was able to do this much consumption of chaos before because my own nervous system wasn't regulated enough. And now it is, and now I can use it, because it's sometimes people think like this is one of the criticisms often of people who are very much into like spirituality and yoga and all of it, that it's so like inward focus that they're not seeing their effect in other people. A gift of being highly sensitive is that other people's pain feels very close to me and very porous.
Mhm.
Seeing other people struggle feels like I'm struggling. And I personally believe that it is true. Like I am part of the world, of nature, of humanity. Like how many species have to go extinct? Like that feels personal too.
Mhm.
I feel like I've just kind of jabbered all over it, but it's all interconnected. It's not linear.
It is, and I can appreciate how you have done the personal work, of exploring and identifying what your gifts allow for you. I think that's a really important part, especially as a helping professional, as a financial professional, and someone who cares deeply about justice. And what you mentioned, you're doing the micro, the one-to-one, the meso, kind of like that. How does it happen in organizations and how does it happen in the structures and so on and so forth? And then the macro, the people that you mentioned, is it Reverend Williams and Adrienne Marie Brown, who I'm also familiar with. I am so grateful for them and their voices because it's like what I take heart in is that if I can't do it in the macro or I can't do it in the micro, when as the collective that shares that value system, someone else is going to do it. Like someone else is going to get there, right? I take heart and encouragement in the fact that there are some really good people out there who are caring very deeply for the community. And like I'm not an organizer, let's say. Like I'm probably not going to be at the front of a strike picket line, but I will go and be in line with you. Because I believe in organizing and I believe in the power of people. So, we have different gifts. And this is for anybody listening, who I think might feel the same thing, like, oh, I'm not doing enough. We all have gifts. And thankfully I do think that we fill in the gaps for each other. At least that's what gives me, some hope and some inspiration as well. So, Deanna, I want to explore something with you because you mentioned that you're a highly sensitive person. And I know that you're the host of Highly Sensitive Money, which is your podcast. And I've listened to some episodes where, personally, this is my experience. At the end of the episode, I felt some healing. I just knew that something was set right internally inside me. And for me, the older I get and the more I do this work, when I have that feeling, I'm like, this is a very good thing that I need to follow and pursue. So I would love for you to talk to our listeners who may or may not be familiar with, highly sensitive people and like, who is a highly sensitive person? What does it mean to be a highly sensitive person in life?
Yeah, thank you. I'm literally beaming. I think this is what being feels like. I can't like stop smiling. Also, I feel shy. You enjoyed the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm really beaming over it. A highly sensitive person. I first heard about this term maybe 4 years ago. And at first I was kind of like, no, I don't want to be highly sensitive. That sounds weak. I thought sensitivity was like feminine and like I didn't
Mhm.
want to do with it. And here I am, like an incredibly feminine person and also very sensitive. A little bit of self-rejection there. And the person who mentioned it said it because so part of being highly sensitive often is that you have a very rich interior world, which means that you can kind of get lost
Mhm.
inwardly looking. And people may have already seen this in our conversation. A highly sensitive person tends to have a lot of connections, like they see how everything is interconnected. They take in more sensory input.
Mhm.
On the downside of taking in more sensory input is that chaos can be overwhelming. It isn't like my if you have more sensors and you're receiving a lot of toxins, you're
Mhm.
going to like flip out first, right? Often it's a metaphor that's used is like being a canary in a coal mine.
Mhm.
About 20 to 30% of the population is actually highly sensitive.
Mm.
They've been studying this. It was Dr. Elaine Aron, who started studying this in the early 90s. And she saw it in humans. She also saw it in a lot of different species. So a really funny example is that when they're counting deer or certain types of fish, usually they put out little sensors. And the portion of the population that's highly sensitive will see the sensor and be like, I'm not touching that. I don't know what it is. So they always have to like add about 20% to however many deer they counted. 'Cause there's that many sensitive deer that are like, "I don't know that, I'm not touching it."
Lisa. Oh.
So they tend to be a little bit more cautious, a little bit of the, like, "Let me understand what's happening." A lot of my clients, whether they identify or not, they need a lot of verbal processing, and I have the capacity for it. I'm here for it, let's talk it out.
Yep.
On the positive side, like, so some of the I was talking with a friend about a sensation because I don't have a lot of the physical symptoms, which is like things are itchy or you have a lot of allergies or light hurts your eyes, noise is overwhelming. I don't have as much of that, but I do have like the positive side of it, which is I can take my dog out for a walk and stand in the sun for 10 seconds and feel a huge endorphin rush.
Wow.
And I'm sure everybody enjoys the sun, but a highly sensitive person might just get lost in the sun, like it's just like you really, really let in the good because you have so many sensors for it. So that's the positive side. And again, when you just grow up with it, you don't know that other people don't experience it.
Right. Yeah. And what I think what, talking about the advocacy and us contributing to the collective movement, I think your podcast in and of itself is creating that collective community of recognizing highly sensitive people recognizing themselves as highly sensitive persons or recognizing the person that they love or their children or their parent or their sibling or, their neighbor. What you're building is a languaging, it sounds like the languaging was already there, but I think in your willingness to talk about it and explore it on your podcast, you're helping people understand that about themselves and find the peace and the, whatever it is that they need to find about identifying that way.
And it's when I focus on the money because at the end of the day, I'm a money coach, I'm a financial educator, I'm an investment manager. And money is so relational. It is
Yes.
so much about relationships. Like when I have clients who receive an inheritance, that inheritance is, yes, it's cash, but it's also all of these relationships with their ancestors,
Yeah.
right? When I have clients who are single mothers with with one or two jobs, they're managing a lot of complexity, right? And part of what I do, part of like where I really, really love the work one-on-one is that I'm a really good listener, so I'll listen to people, to what they like, what they care about, and I'll use metaphors to translate money to them. Because if money is something that activates, that dysregulates your nervous system, I get to be an intervention to help people then have a regulated money system, nervous system while talking about money. And every time you have a money conversation that feels positive, that at least feels neutral, you're changing your relationship with money. You're growing your capacity for positive money interactions. A lot of the systems breakdown that we see is focused on money, focused on domination power. So if here in the micro sense, we can experience positive relationships with money, that can change the collective.
Absolutely. I'm a believer in that, and that's exactly why I'm here hosting this podcast and why you're there hosting your podcast, right? It's like the internal reflects to the external, so on and so forth. So Deanna, the work you're doing is so important, and I think it does help so many people currently and can help new people. I want people to be able to find you and to find the work that you're doing. So tell us, how can they find you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Maureen. It's the best place is all the colors, www.allthecolors.net for network. And for investment management, you'll also find information there. I give everyone a free 30-minute heart-centered money call. And sometimes talking with me for 30 minutes and just giving you like, yeah, it looks like you're fine, or check out this book, look at this resource. It can be enough to really help people on the next 6 months, year direction of their money journey. So that I'm really grateful that I have the capacity to offer that right now because I may not always be able to do that.
True. Yeah.
So I think my website is the best place to find me. I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Strategy Squad for investment management is strategysquad.com. And my podcast, Highly Sensitive Money, is on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcast.
Excellent. Well, Deanna, I often get to the end of an episode with someone and I'm like, I feel so energized. And today is no different. I feel energized. And as I shared before, I think, I feel energized and I feel inspired and I feel hopeful, especially because we did talk about the collective and we did talk about justice. And that was exactly what I am needing in this moment, in this time that we're facing. So Deanna, thank you so much for being on the show. I would love to have you back. I feel like we could have more conversations to help our listeners.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you.
Well, everybody listening, as always with finances, be kind to yourself, seek support when you need it, and let me know how it goes. Thank you so much for listening today. We'll see you next time.